Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, folks, we've been covering this story. We started covering it yesterday in a short little show, and it's sort of a bizarre incident. The shooting death in a car stop of a Border Patrol agent in Vermont, and you see that young female in this thumbnail. Her name is Teresa Youngblood. She's 21 years old. And in a car stop where she was in the vehicle with a man named Felix Buchholz, a German national, they were pulled over by the police. They had been under surveillance for the better part of a week, allegedly because of Felix Buchholz's immigration status and some suspicious activity reported by some employees of a local hotel. And the bizarre thing about this is when they were pulled over, and this is the spot they were pulled over. You see this thumbnail up on the screen. Interstate 91 in Coventry, Vermont. They went right to their guns, and it's unclear which one of them, whether it was Teresa Youngblood or Felix Buchholz. Apparently, they both fired and both received gunfire from at least one of the Border Patrol agents, killing Felix Buchholz and wounding Teresa Youngblood. Now, we don't know very much about the backgrounds of Teresa Youngblood or Felix Buchholz, other than that they're 21. He's a German national. It's been reported that Teresa is from Washington State. But we're going to look into that tonight. We're going to discuss it. I have, of course, my special guest, Professor Mike Geary. And we're going to do a little bit of a dive into this case and throw out some of the information that we do know. So, folks, hold on to your hats. Hold on to your loved ones. Hold on to your opinions. Hold on to your thoughts. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball to NHL and UFC, BetOnline is the number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. I'm going to get right to our co-host today, and he's been a little under the weather, so I let him beat his flu, but he's back. He's ready to go. Welcome to the show. Criminal justice professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, retired NYPD sergeant, attorney, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, thank you for having me on. It's good to feel better.
Yeah. Oh, wow. The flu is not something you wish on anyone. You know, it's horrible. But I guess in this during the winter, it's almost inevitable to get it. I don't want to say that. I'll be next. But so, Mike, you see this thumbnail, and again, there was an arrest made, and these are the two individuals that are involved: Felix Buchholz, allegedly a German national, and Teresa Youngblood. And all we know about her, she's 21. She's from Washington State. This, to me, sounds like they may have been radicalized with some type of group because of the weaponry in their car, the fact that they had numerous cell phones and they were trying to covering them with aluminum foil. There's one reason to do that, so that the cell phones aren't emitting a signal that can be tracked. But what were they doing in this area? Who are they? Who is Teresa Youngblood? She's from the state of Washington. What's her background? Who's her family? What's her education? What's her criminal history? Does she work? What is their connection to this area of Vermont, if any? Does she have any past with any radical groups? These are questions that I have. And again, the same things for Felix Buchholz, German national. What was he doing here? What were they doing in Vermont? Why were they armed to the teeth? Someone said to me in the chat that, because they had, over 40 something rounds of 380 and they had this weapon and that weapon, that doesn't really make them armed. This is Vermont. And, you're right. It's an open carry state. And so that may not seem unusual, but unusual with their other behavior. It was unusual enough that someone was raised up and reported them to the police. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, as far as we know so far, she was originally from Minnesota. She lived in Washington State. She finds herself with this guy in a car in Vermont. He's a German national. He's violated a visa, maybe student visa sort of thing. And this, I hate to say it, but this is what a reminder that when you're dealing with possible illegal immigrants like Felix overstaying his visa, that makes him illegal. Now he needs to be sent back to Germany. When you're dealing with these sorts of things as a law enforcement officer, car stops and domestic disputes are the two most dangerous assignments. And here we go with a car stop on a suspected illegal alien. And not every one of them is going to come, gently into that good night with ICE or Border Patrol or Homeland Security or the local police. No, because they know what is awaiting them. And that's shipment back, at the very least, shipment back to the country they came from. This is dangerous work. I want to know right off the bat how long he's been here. Was he a student? Where did he go to school? What course, not what courses, what groups did he hang out with? What were some of the people he hung out with? I want all the information from his cell phone, from his laptop. I want to know how he met her. I want to know, what her relationship is. What has she done over the past, say, 2 or 3 years? What has he done over the past couple of years? And and by this time, I think, as you and I discussed this before we went on the air, I believe that they have a lot more information on these two than they've revealed yet, because there's a scarcity of information on these two, which is very, very, very suspicious. So I'm thinking that there is a lot more to this that the FBI is just not willing to release right now.
Mike, I 100% agree with you. There's a database that law enforcement uses, and this is from what I know 13 years ago. I'm sure the databases are much more intrusive. And it was called Faces of the Nation or Auto Track. You could put my name in there and everything about me would pop up. Cars I own, how many cars I've owned in my life, licenses I own, residences I live at, gun permits, my arrest history, which I don't have one, proudly.
Good.
All of those things on average John Q. Public American. So we don't even know that. That is how secretive the FBI has chosen to be on this case right now. Released from the U.S. Attorney's Office on the 24th, this is their press release. Woman charged with discharging firearm during assault of United States Border Patrol agent. First of all, this is a murder, a murder of a U.S. Border Patrol agent. And whether he was killed by Felix Buchholz or killed by Teresa Youngblood, or potentially could it have been friendly fire? That would still result in a charge of murder based on the underlying felony. They would be charged, both of them, but Felix is deceased. He was killed by Border Patrol. But these charges are very strange to me also. The United States Attorney's Office for the District of Vermont stated that Teresa Youngblood, 21, and it was believed to be from Washington State, has been charged by criminal complaint with one count of using a deadly weapon while assaulting a United States Border Patrol agent, and one count of using and discharging a firearm during and in relation to that assault. Her initial court appearance has not yet been scheduled. According to the charging affidavit, during the afternoon of January 20th, 2025, a United States Border Patrol agent initiated a traffic stop of a Toyota Prius on Interstate 91 in Coventry, Vermont. The car was occupied by young blood and a man who was a citizen of Germany and whose immigration status was in question. Youngblood and her companion had come to the attention of law enforcement a few days earlier when a hotel employee in Leidenville expressed concern about them being dressed in tactical clothing and protective gear while also being armed. Law enforcement also observed the couple in the Prius earlier on January 20th at a Walmart parking lot in Newport, Vermont. At that time, the German man was seen wrapping unidentifiable objects with aluminum foil while seated in the vehicle. So that obviously raised them up, but this still is not explaining things. They know a lot more. There was a warrant, of course, executed on the vehicle. We want to know everything they found in that vehicle, but mostly we want to know who the hell are these people? Two young 21-year-old, both of them are 21. Radicalized? That's what it seems like to us. Why doesn't the FBI come out and tell us what they have found out thus far?
Bill? Yeah, okay, Bill, I'll just talk about that. Yeah, I'm looking at this scenario, okay? I'm looking at the scenario. They're in northern Vermont, and it appears they're on Route 91, and they're heading north towards the Canadian border. They're not far from the Canadian border when they're stopped. It could possibly be that at this point, they're suspected of being part of having associates in Canada. So maybe there's a joint United States, Homeland Security and Royal Canadian Mounted Police. That's their federal law enforcement. They're very capable. They're probably in charge of Canadian Homeland Security. And it could be that in this investigation, they got a couple of tips. They started investigating these people. They found that Felix is a German national. And then they observed him doing some really strange things. They're headed towards Canada. Maybe the idea was not to wait until they went into Canada and let the Canadians handle it. And maybe they decided, let's just handle it on our side of the border. But it is possible, the fact that they were so close to the Canadian border, that they were going to meet people in Canada that they were associated with. And so that would make it a multinational, investigation. Maybe that's why they're being so terse with any sort of information when it comes to, from our Homeland Security when it comes to this case, because there may be an ongoing pre-existing investigation in Canada. But you would really want to have a little bit more information and clarifying the charge. You're right. That charge is murder. It's murder, whether it was a ricochet from a friendly fire or either one, or Felix, doesn't matter. This is a murder case. So it is kind of strange. And at this point, almost a week has gone by, like 6 days have gone by. And at this point, they should have been able to secure all, the crime scene there, their home where they were staying, the hotel, that sort of thing. And so this may be just a tip of something much, much larger, and they just don't want to talk about it. I don't think it's a isolated incident with just two little people, like a Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing, and they got surprised by the police. I think there's a little bit more to it than that, judging by what they've got, what they were doing, how they were dressed. I think there's something more, and hopefully, if there's anything in Canada, the Canadians can help us.
100% there's something more, because what 21-year-olds pulled over in a car stop go right to firing at law enforcement without hesitation, pull their guns and fire at the police. According to the charging affidavit, during the January 20th vehicle stop, both Youngblood and her companion were armed. During the stop, Youngblood fired a handgun without warning toward at least one of the border agents while outside the vehicle. Her German companion also tried to draw a firearm, and at least one Border Patrol agent fired his service weapon. The exchange of gunfire resulted in Border Patrol agent David Mallon sustaining fatal injuries. Youngblood and her companion were also shot. The German man was pronounced dead at the scene, and Youngblood was taken to the hospital for medical care. The investigation into this incident is ongoing. It's being led by the Federal Bureau of Investigation with substantial assistance from the Vermont State Police and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives in coordination with Homeland Security Investigations, United States Border Patrol, the Newport, Vermont Police Department, and Orleans County Sheriff's Department. Acting United States Attorney Michael B. Drescher stated, "The events leading to the prosecution tragically demonstrate how the men and women of law," they're not telling us anything, really. That's the problem. They're not telling us anything about the investigation.
No.
Who are these people? Why did they go right to banging it out, to going right to firing at law enforcement? Something tells me that they're part of some group, Mike.
Yeah, this isn't the way usually 21-year-olds act. I remember the 4-6 in the Bronx, and you had some tough gangbangers out there, and they're young and they're always strapped and they're always looking for trouble. And sometimes they will shoot it out with the police, even at that age. But these people, it doesn't seem like they have any previous record. They're not slinging dope. They're not transporting kilos of cocaine, across the country or, across state lines where they're going to be, have their 9 ready at the just in case they get ripped off. Nothing like that. The pictures are really strange. When you look at them, they look like they're high school seniors or college freshmen with, the acne, and they still just look like kids. And that is really very strange, because what kid who hasn't been radicalized or has some sort of real deep, serious anger towards law enforcement or other people would do that sort of thing that quickly, just shoot it out on the side of the road with the police? That is very strange. It's not like they robbed a bank and they're getting away and they're stopped by the state police, that sort of thing. No, these people, they went to the guns pretty fast. They probably knew the jig was up and that he was going to be taken in custody and turned over to ICE, and whatever was in the car was going to be found out, and maybe whatever plans they had were going to be spoiled. I would bet my next paycheck they're part of a much larger group.
I agree. I want to play this from ABC in Vermont. And keep in mind, there's been no really breaking news in regards to investigative information being released by the FBI or law enforcement.
Woman in the deadly shooting of a U.S. Border Patrol agent in Vermont.
It comes on the day the remains of the fallen agent, David Chris Malin, were flown back home to Minnesota. Our Eric Shalou has been hearing from Malin's family and federal authorities on this investigation, Eric.
Yeah, Paul and Leah, inside an FBI affidavit filed in federal court in Vermont, we're learning new details from investigators about the deadly gunfire that took the life of Border Patrol agent David Chris Malin. The Minnesotan is being remembered as a dedicated public servant. Law enforcement lined the streets of Burlington, Vermont to honor fallen U.S. Border Patrol agent David Chris Malin. The 44-year-old Blue Earth, Minnesota native was fatally shot Monday afternoon south of the Canadian border. Malin's family, in a statement to 5 Eyewitness News, wrote in part, "They are deeply touched at the outpouring of love and support. Our grief continues. Please continue to pray for us." On Friday, law enforcement escorted Malin's remains to the Albany, New York airport for the return flight home to Minnesota. According to an FBI affidavit, 21-year-old Teresa Youngblood from Washington has been charged in the deadly firefight with Malin and other agents. The FBI says Border Patrol stopped the car she and a German man were in on Interstate 91 in northern Vermont. Investigators allege Youngblood drew and fired a handgun towards at least one of the uniformed Border Patrol agents without warning. In the exchange, Malin was hit. Youngblood and the man in the car were also wounded. The report says the couple had been under surveillance after being spotted in town wearing black tactical gear and carrying a gun. The FBI says they found in the couple's vehicle a ballistic helmet, night vision goggles, respirators, and ammunition, along with a package of shooting range targets, some of which had been used. They also found two-way radios and about a dozen electronic devices, travel and lodging information from multiple states, and an apparent journal. The FBI investigation continues.
He died in the line of duty, serving to protect our country. We will cherish his memories and mourn his sacrifice.
Earlier this week, Minnesota State Representative Krista Knudsen, Maitland's cousin, spoke on the House floor.
I am grateful for his service, and I know he was very proud of it. Our family is heartbroken.
Maitland was an Air Force veteran who also served in federal law enforcement for 15 years, including time at the White House and the Pentagon. Maitland's family tells me a memorial has been set for next month at Fort Snelling.
So yes, what were these people into? What were they? That's not normal contents of a car of two 21-year-olds.
No.
It's not normal to have, those multiple cell phones, apparently multiple laptops, X amount of ammunition. It's a sign of something else. We can't guess right now what the something else is, but the FBI obviously isn't releasing it because there is something to this. And it's almost been a week. Monday will be a week since this occurred. What will the FBI release? What are we going to find out about the two shooters, the one deceased German, Felix Buchholz, and the 21-year-old Teresa Youngblood from Washington State? Someone in the chat suggested she could be from Antifa. Yes, she could be from any radical group.
Sure.
We can't just point that out. But yes, Washington State does have a
Good point.
a big contingent of Antifa followers. But there's no doubt in my mind as a former law enforcement officer that they were not up to good things. And showing what transpired after this car stop just lets us all realize that, yes, they were not up to good things, Mike.
Yeah, Bill, one of the viewers suggested maybe an act of domestic terrorism. Perhaps the police inadvertently interrupted planning that they had by following them around for a couple of days. They mentioned to the police when the police had first tried to contact them that they were looking for property in the area. If you're a police officer and you look at these two, they look like they're 18, 19, 20 years old. They're buying property in the area. There's something going on there. That doesn't even pass the straight face test. So they were planning something, and maybe they got spooked a little bit and decided to get out of Dodge. And that's when they unexpectedly got pulled over, perhaps, as I'm kind of reading what's going on, unexpectedly pulled over by the police on 91. And then they decided they had to shoot it out. My guess is, if I could make a guess, is that they were planning some sort of, domestic terrorism. Maybe they were going to shoot someone, they were going to shoot up a school or something. They were going to commit an act of domestic terrorism. And I think they got interrupted. And,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Karen Cole, first of all, Karen, good to see you. Karen Cole has her own podcast, Legal Minded Friends. Wrapping a cell phone in aluminum foil effectively blocks its cellular signal by creating a Faraday cage, preventing the phone from sending or receiving radio waves. Karen, thank you for that information. Yes, and most of us wouldn't do that. So that, yes, is an indication that they were up to something nefarious. Angie, Antifa believe they are at war with the United States. Well, Angie, we haven't solidified whether or not they are part of Antifa or any other radical group, but it would seem from their behavior that they have perhaps been radicalized. So yeah, we don't know yet. So that's why we are awaiting information from the FBI, and even this report from the U.S. Attorney's Office gave us very, very little information. And so far, nothing really has come out about who the hell is Teresa Youngblood. Just saying, oh, she's from Washington, or she was from there. That doesn't really tell us much about her. And believe me, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and local law enforcement know exactly who she is right now. Why? Can we read into the fact that they haven't released why yet? Potentially. The Thoris from the chat, at Legal Minded Friends, Karen Cole, no clue why they wrapped them up like that. They should have purchased just Faraday bags for the phone on the net. Well, that was probably the cheap way to do it, just to use tinfoil. They probably read that in the Anarchist Manual or something,
Right.
Cheap way is to get a Faraday effect on your cell phone. Ramona, I just had you, Ramona. There you go. Ramona Cooper. I live in Vermont, and the news WCAX says it was a woman who got out of the car and shot. I'm wondering why was the man shot and killed. Maybe he did shoot. I can't wait for the investigation. Ramona, you're right. It was indicated that Teresa Youngblood did fire at the officer, the deceased officer, and she apparently caused his death. But it's unclear whether Felix Buckholt fired, but they said he did produce a firearm. So that'll take an investigation. They'll have to look at both guns to see where the spent shells. There were apparently 380 semi-automatics. There would be spent shells on the scene. Also, did one law enforcement officer fire at both of them, or did Officer David Mallon, who was killed in this firefight, did he also get a few shots off? That's unclear because the investigation has not been as yet transparent. Mike?
Bill, at this point, when we hear about shootings in the United States and you get a person this young, usually you get, I'm just thinking of the shooting at Butler, Pennsylvania, the attempt on President Trump's life. Within, 24 hours, they had pictures of this person at different ages. They had his background, his education. I think they even had stuff about his political beliefs, whatever places that he donated to. At this point, why I'm surprised we're not hearing anything. She's a 2019 graduate of Oshkosh High School, and she was a cheerleader, and she went to this college and dropped out. And Felix has worked as a mechanic in Volkswagen for the last 2 years. Whatever it happens to be, nothing like that. It's like strangely silent, which means that whatever they found, they're not willing to release for whatever reason. And so there's my guess is, and you've done much more investigations than I would ever done, that they're onto something here, and they don't want to give away too much information about this person. But it is strange. They know a lot more than they're releasing already. They just don't want to tell anybody.
100%. Awesome Cow from the chat. I live in Vermont, and the news has said that there is a third person they're looking for. And, the news did report that, and how timely of your comments.
In the shootout that killed a Vermont Border Patrol agent. Thank you for joining us at 6. I'm Darren Perrin.
And I'm Kat Villianzoni. Agent David Malin was killed during a traffic stop Monday afternoon on Interstate 91 in Coventry.
Channel 3 News first broke the news, and our Ike Ben David was on the scene since that story broke. He joins us now in the studio. Ike, what is the latest?
Darren and Kat, the FBI has said 2 suspects were involved in that.
Okay, we lost the sound. Unfortunately, we lost the sound. Hopefully, Billy will be able to reset the sound.
They had guns. That's the German national.
You lost the sound, Mike?
No, yeah, I couldn't hear anything at all for
okay. Apparently, let me just play this, that there's they believe there's a third person involved in this shooting, and but there's not a lot of information relative to that. So let me play this off. There's not a lot of clear information about this. Yeah. But they're reporting that potentially there was a third person involved, and that's coming from the news. It's not coming from a law enforcement source, so we don't know if in fact there's any truth to this right now. So as I said, that's one of the things that you hope that law enforcement will be transparent and come out, and there has to be a reason why they're not releasing much of this information out to the public. It would make sense, for the people that live in Vermont and the people that you can use the public when we always say, if you see something, say something. Someone obviously saw something here because they reported these two to the police. And that's what brought them, in this case, under surveillance in the first place, is that their behavior was looked upon as being quite suspicious. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, Billy, we need the public's help with all of these things. See something, say something, do something, call 911, make that call. And the people at the hotel did that. I think maybe one other person made a phone call. that's what law enforcement needs. And, unfortunately, the Border Patrol agent was killed, but these two are now neutralized. And that's a good thing for America and good thing maybe for Canada that they were. But there's probably, you're right, there's got to be at least one other person, a third person in this conspiracy. It isn't just two like high school sweethearts that are running away to get married. No, these two are a deadly duo, and they must have help somewhere. Someone with logistics, someone with ideas, someone helping them with funding, a place to live. They're somewhat organized, and therefore, we need help from the public. So it would be great if there was more information forthcoming, and then the FBI or Homeland Security could say, "Look, we're on the lookout for this other person." They don't want to call him a suspect, just a person of interest that we would like to talk to. That would, I think, alleviate a lot of stress, because the public would feel like, okay, you trust us, we're in on this, and we can help, because now you have the eyes and ears and the ability of a million people rather than just law enforcement.
Absolutely. America from the chat, if they're affiliated with Antifa, this organization should be classified as a terrorist organization. Well, we're a little bit jumping the gun with saying they're aligned with anyone right now. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, hit that red subscribe button on the screen. Give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, hit the like button, share us with your friends and your family. If you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels, and you could contribute to us and keep this channel going and healthy and alive and doing as many shows as possible. I want to play a little bit of this from a local news.
Of a Border Patrol agent in Vermont. The agent shot and killed during a traffic stop near the Canadian border. One suspect was killed in the shootout. A second suspect wounded and now facing charges. Court records showing authorities had them under surveillance nearly a week before the shooting. Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, a Washington state woman is facing charges in the first killing of a Border Patrol agent in more than a decade. Authorities say 21-year-old Teresa Youngblood and Felix Bockhout, a German citizen on an expired visa, engaged police in a hail of gunfire along Interstate 91 in Coventry, Vermont, about 20 miles from the Canadian border. 44-year-old Border Patrol agent David Chris Mayland died later at a local hospital.
I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to Agent Mayland's family, friends, and colleagues.
According to a federal affidavit, investigators had been conducting periodic surveillance of the pair for more than a week after an employee at a nearby hotel reported them checking in dressed in all-black tactical-style clothing, with Youngblood carrying an apparent firearm in an exposed carry holster. When authorities made contact, they say the pair told them they were in the vicinity to look at purchasing property. Buckle was killed, Youngblood wounded. Inside the vehicle, police say they found a cache of weapons, body armor, and two-way radios. Tonight, this case is a mystery. Why did that traffic stop end in such a violent confrontation?
So yeah, we still don't know. Those are questions we still have. Yeah. Why? Why did they have body armor? Why did they have two-way radios? Why did they have all those cell phones? And why were they wrapping them in aluminum foil? All of these questions, I would imagine at this point, the FBI and local law enforcement have the answers to. Yet we don't. So we're waiting to hear from law enforcement as what the hell's going on here.
Yeah, Bill, there's a mention of a journal. I want to know what's in that journal, because that may be that they're kind of chronicling what they're doing. The idea that they're walking around with tactical body armor and some sort of, like a shock plate in front, that sort of stuff, like almost like a SWAT kind of thing. They're seemingly, that's pretty hardcore if you just walk around in public like that. So it appears that they were going to shoot it out with someone, because that's why you'd have that body armor. So, it's just a little frustrating that the FBI does know more than they do, and they're willing to release. But this was a dangerous pair, and I think perhaps they just got waylaid unexpectedly by the police. And Malin, unfortunately, law enforcement officer Malin paid for it with his life. But this is there are people like this, and they are willing to shoot it out. And they were going to shoot it out. They were very, very serious. And there's others. You got to know there's other people like that that aren't to be trifled with, especially anybody also facing, non-Americans facing deportation also.
Yeah, something someone asked in the chat, why would they walk around with body armor? Why did they do things that were suspicious? First of all, this is not Bonnie and Clyde, right? They're two 21-year-old kids that did an adult crime, a really horrific crime in killing a Border Patrol officer. So we have to think that they had something else in mind here, that they were willing to kill someone in order to accomplish whatever nefarious goals they had here. Sleuth Wild, not Antifa. That's made-up group to describe people who rebel against the far right. It's not a made-up group. Antifa is real. And if you don't think they're real, just go watch the video of them destroying and burning buildings and destroying things. They're not made up. They absolutely do exist. The Nervous Navigator, not radicalized, more likely just products of a totally failed school system full of teachers who indoctrinate. I don't know, Nervous Navigator. I don't know if I could go with that. That's sort of a way to go from poor education to radicalization and to killing a Border Patrol agent. I can't really buy into that. Scrappy Heart from the chat, not Scientologists. Scientologists are uber conservative and Republican. Look, we can guess. We can sit here guessing who are they, who radicalized them, what is their motivations, but be sure that law enforcement knows who they are and what they were about to do. And perhaps one of the reasons they're keeping this quiet is because potentially there's others. There's others that perhaps don't know that FBI and local law enforcement, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives, the local Vermont police, Vermont State Police, New York State Police, perhaps the others in this group don't know what the police know, what the FBI knows. So they think they can clandestinely go about their plans, their future plans. But chances are that the female perpetrator right here, Teresa Youngblood, chances are she spilled the beans. She's wounded. She's in a hospital. That'll take a lot of radicalization away from you when you get a bullet hole in your body and you're handcuffed to your hospital bed. So she may not be the radical that she thought she was after she got struck with law enforcement's gunfire. Mike.
And Billy, you're hit up right on the head. She's now looking at, right now, she's just charged with assaulting a federal officer. If this turns into an actual, murder charge and they change it, she's looking at the death penalty as an act of terrorism. So that will cool down your ardor for rebellion against the country. So sooner or later, she's going to give up some information. May not be a lot, but she's going to give up something, because no one who's 21 years old wants to be sitting in a cage for the rest of their life facing, death by needle. So that will take a lot of wind out of her sails. And we could hope that we can get some information out of her. And that would help law enforcement a great deal. But the cell phone, the laptops, we saw how much information you get out of a cell phone and a laptop in the Long Island serial killer case. And those are old devices. These two, anybody that they've talked to that's on their cell phone, that they've emailed, the police are going to be paying them a visit.
100%. Georgia. Antifa dates back to the 1920s in Germany. They were basically the armed force of the Communist Party as they are today. The only difference is the Democrats are the Communist Party. Well, I don't know about that, but let me play this here from local news.
Turn our attention now to another story that we have been following very.
Bill, as soon as you went out, the volume went down. Bill? Okay. Yeah, this happened the last time when Bill.
Is the sound's not up?
Now it's up. As soon as you exited, the sound clicked off.
All right, let me see if I can just
Yeah.
play it. Let me know right away if the sound's not up.
Bring us all the latest that we know from this entire situation and investigation is a Fox multimedia reporter, Kaylee Schuyler, as she is joining us live down there in Vermont. Kaylee, excuse me, what do we know?
Good evening, Carell. Well, two people were in the car during the traffic stop. One of the suspects died in the shooting, and the other person was injured and is in custody, according to the FBI. Now, a source confirms reporting from the Washington Post that one of the suspects is a German national who overstayed a visa. The FBI brought in remote-controlled robots last night to inspect a backpack and other items at the scene where the agent died. He was 44-year-old David Mayland, a 13-year veteran of the U.S. Border Patrol. He works in the Swanson sector, which covers Vermont and parts of New York and New Hampshire. Last year, agents in the Swanson sector arrested a record number of people, more than 9 from 97 countries. But there are questions right now about how this shooting went down.
I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to Agent Malin's family, friends, and colleagues. The FBI is leading this investigation, and the Vermont State Police will continue to assist in any way they can. Information is still being collected, and we don't have more to share at this point, unfortunately.
The last time a border agent was killed by gunfire was in Arizona in 2010. Carell.
So this is obviously a dangerous job. Vermont, I would imagine, it's very, very rural. So, I mean, this doesn't, I'm sure, happen almost ever in Vermont, although Vermont is, Mike, open carry country, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like Texas, I think you have to kind of assume that when you do make a car stop as a law enforcement agent, that people are carrying firearms, whether it's legal or illegal. But you got to assume they're carrying at that point. Yeah.
Some of the questions we have also, okay, again, as we stated early in the broadcast, who are these perpetrators? And we know their names, of course: Felix Buchholz, the German national, and Teresa Youngblood. And all we know about her, she's 21. She's from Washington State. Were they radicalized? Why did they do this? And it only makes any sense that perhaps they were radicalized based on their behavior and what was found inside the vehicle. If they were radicalized, again, what were their motives? What were they trying to do? It seemed like they were ready to travel through several states. The story that they were looking to buy real estate doesn't seem to make all that much sense. But so we want to know, who are they? What's their history? What's their background? What's their education? Who are their families? Do they work? Where'd they get the money to do this? The car was registered, the Toyota Prius was registered to Felix Buchholz.
That's right.
Where is the car registered? What's the address? Of course, the FBI knows that. Did Felix have a job? Was he a student? Where's his family? Has there been search warrants conducted on the residences of Felix Buchholz and, of course, of Teresa Youngblood? That's a step. How about their cell phones? Of course, the police would need, and the FBI, to get search warrants for the cell phones. What have they found out from searching their cell phones? Their laptops. What did they find? Maybe there's a manifesto. Maybe there's plans inside their cell phones, pictures, a map of what they were going to do. By a map, I mean just a how-to or what to do. Were they ever been arrested before? What's their education? If they have an education other than high school, did they go to college? Of course, their family backgrounds. And all this, as we know it from law enforcement, can be found out in the click of a computer screen. Just name, address, date of birth, and they'll come up with pages and pages of investigative information that tells law enforcement who these two are. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we don't know yet. And so, and it's been almost a week. That could be different things. It could be that the FBI found out some very important information, and they don't want to let the proverbial cat out of the bag, or they're still awaiting investigative data vis-a-vis the cell phone, vis-a-vis the laptop, the search warrants on their last residences. So all of those things are possibilities, but they still know one hell of a lot more than we know, Mike.
Yeah, the one saving grace, the one little thing that good comes out of this is that she's still alive, and you could put a lot of legal pressure on her. If it was kind of like they shot it out and then she tried to commit suicide and he tried to commit suicide, or they shot each other in some sort of, death wish type of thing, then they would take their secrets to their grave. And then the police would be contemplating what's going on. You wouldn't have a live witness to speak to. In this case, she's still alive. She's not going anywhere, probably for a good portion of her life. And so you could put a lot of pressure. And if she could break down and give some information, that would help the police. That's the only good thing I could see that's come out of this, is that they got her alive. And I want her alive. I don't want 2 dead terrorists. I want 1 alive, and I want 1 still living so they could give up someone else.
100%, Mike. From the Thoris, from the chat, some people are saying, too bad Vermont has the death penalty. Does not matter because they committed a federal crime. Thoris, you are 100% correct. If the feds prosecute this, the death penalty is on the table. You're right. It's a federal crime, killing a Border Patrol agent. That's why the FBI is involved in this. And that's why, of course, we're interested to know, what the hell does the FBI know about this girl and about the dead German national that also was willing to shoot it out with the police and apparently was killed in the gunfight. So let me play this.
Woman from Washington is charged with federal crimes tonight in connection with the shooting death of a U.S. Border Patrol agent on the East Coast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Joyce Taylor. The shooting happened Monday in Vermont, about 13 miles south of the Canadian border. King 5 Sebastian Robertson joining us with new information. And Sebastian, we have learned that federal investigators were surveilling this woman before the shooting.
Yeah, Joyce, a lot of twists and turns to this story. It happened in Vermont, in a little town just south of the Canadian border called Coventry, about 20 minutes south. The federal government alleges that Teresa Youngblood and another man drew federal law enforcement attention while traveling with weapons and tactical gear. 21-year-old Teresa Youngblood of Washington State is facing 2 weapons charges and the possibility of life in prison after the shooting death of a Border Patrol agent during a traffic stop in Vermont. According to the criminal complaint filed in U.S. District Court, Youngblood and a man named Felix Bockholt, a German citizen, had been under surveillance by law enforcement for about a week leading up to the deadly shooting. Investigators say an employee of a hotel called the police, concerned after seeing the pair dressed in all black with protective equipment and open carrying a pistol. Tuesday, Border Patrol agents pulled over the vehicle they were riding in to conduct an immigration inspection. That's when they allege Youngblood, the driver of the vehicle, opened fire. Inside the vehicle the 2 were driving, authorities recovered various pieces of tactical gear, including a ballistic helmet, night vision goggles, firearms, and ammunition. As the investigation continues, the community is mourning the loss of Border Patrol agent David Chris Malland. Earlier today, hundreds of law enforcement personnel attended a procession escorting his body to a funeral home. Youngblood was shot during the confrontation, taken to the hospital, is expected to survive. That's according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. She faces, Joyce, a minimum of 10 years in prison, a maximum of life if convicted.
Okay, so is there any indication about what was happening, why they had all the stuff in their vehicle, et cetera?
Well, a little bit of information came out of the search warrant for the vehicle. According to documents, the couple was traveling across the East Coast. Investigators discovered travel logs and lodging information for multiple states, along with about a dozen electronic devices. Though law enforcement, it's still early though, they haven't given any big picture as to what may have been going on, if anything.
Okay, thank you.
So again, law enforcement is keeping this very, very close to the vest. They're not releasing any information that would tell us if Teresa Youngblood is part of a radicalized group, and potentially, as we listed before, the possible reasons is that maybe they're targeting others in this group. Maybe there was a master plan to do something, and that could be why the FBI is keeping this silent, Mike.
Yeah, if it was just a Bonnie and Clyde duo like these two people, and it was over, and there was no further indications that there was anyone else, then they probably would have released a lot of information saying, "Look, we've gone through this, case closed. We got the two people. We got one's dead, one's in custody," that sort of thing. But with the idea that they are being so tight-lipped, there's probably the idea that these two were part of a much larger group. Could be 2 or 3 others, 10 others, we don't know, but they're part of a larger conspiracy. That's why they're being so tight. Or else they would have just had that press conference and then said, okay, case is closed. But at this point, yeah, they're part of a larger conspiracy.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit that like button. We got more likes in the chat, because folks, that's how we get this show pushed on to other people and become big. So if you're not subscribed, again, hit that subscribe button. If you want to contribute to us, we have a Patreon. We also have a YouTube channel membership of 5 different levels. I want to play this also from the local news.
In Vermont, well, they are saying that a woman has been charged with discharging a firearm during an assault of a U.S. Border Patrol agent. So I want to read from the statement just put out by the U.S. Attorney's Office there in Vermont. Let's take a look at some of this video from the scene of this. And I'm reading now. They say this: the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Vermont stated that Teresa Youngblood, 21, and who is believed to be from Washington State, has been charged by criminal complaint with 1 count of using a deadly weapon while assaulting a U.S. Border Patrol agent, and 1 count of using and discharging a firearm during and in relation to that assault. Her initial court appearance has not yet been scheduled. Now, according to the charging affidavit, during the afternoon of January 20th, Monday, a U.S. Border Patrol agent initiated a traffic stop of a Toyota Prius on I-91 in Coventry, Vermont. The car was occupied by Youngblood and a man who was a citizen of Germany and whose immigration status was in question. Youngblood and her companion had come to the attention of law enforcement a few days earlier when a hotel employee in Lyndonville, Vermont, expressed concerns about them being dressed in tactical clothing and protective gear while also being armed. Law enforcement also observed the couple in the Prius earlier that Monday at a Walmart parking lot in Newport, Vermont. At that time, the German man was seen wrapping unidentifiable objects with aluminum foil while seated in the vehicle here. Fox News Digital obtained some of these images of the Prius in question. Now, they say, according to the affidavit, during the January 20th vehicle stop, both Youngblood and her companion were armed. During the stop, she fired her handgun without warning toward at least one of the Border Patrol agents while outside the vehicle. Her German companion also tried to draw a firearm, and at least one Border Patrol agent fired his service weapon. The exchange of gunfire resulted in Border Patrol agent David Malin sustaining fatal injuries. Youngblood and her companion were also shot. The German man was pronounced dead at the scene, and she was taken to the hospital for medical care. They say the investigation into this incident is ongoing. It's being led by the FBI with substantial assistance from the Vermont State Police and ATF in connection with Homeland Security investigations, HSI, U.S. Border Patrol, the Newport Police Department, and Orleans County, Vermont Sheriff's Department as well. So wanted to give you an update on this. I know online a lot of people were talking about this particular case. And if there are any more updates, we'll make sure to follow it.
So again, people, one of the big questions everyone has, of course, is why is she being charged with possession and use of a firearm? Why isn't she being charged with murder? And believe me, I think that will be forthcoming. The murder charges will absolutely be forthcoming. They have to get to the bottom of this investigation. But you know, even if for example, if the German national Felix Buchholz it turns out that he's the one that shot and killed David Mayland, she would still be charged with murder for acting in concert.
That's right.
So I don't know why the FBI and the local law enforcement are not releasing that information, or not the U.S. Attorney's Office, not raising the charges to murder first degree. She's over 21 years old, Mike.
Yeah, the only thing as I'm listening to that story, I can think of is that at the time that she was actually taken into custody, she went to the emergency room. Buchholz is dead at the scene. Mayland was seriously wounded, and he died in the hospital, so he was taken. So I'm thinking maybe chronologically, at the first moment that they mentioned that they were going to charge her with a crime, Mayland was probably still alive. And so maybe they just haven't formally updated the charge for some strange reason, that they're just a little slack on that end of the game, and haven't yet changed it technically up to a murder. But there's no doubt she's whether or not, doesn't matter whether Buchholz or she pulled the trigger, she can be charged with murder.
Absolutely. Blue Lazaro from the chat. Concerns about Youngblood began as early as May, when Youngblood's parents, who live in Seattle, contacted Seattle police to report her missing. The couple said their daughter had abruptly moved out. Well, thank you, Blue Lazaro. I didn't have that information, and potentially that absolutely could be true. But as we stated early on in this broadcast, is that not a lot of information is being released by law enforcement, and we'll have to keep following this to get new information. Matt Carr from the chat: since they had them under surveillance for a few days, I wonder if they had a geofence around them and possibly made other arrests prior to pulling them over. You know, Matt Carr, that's a possibility. However, I think that if that were the case, I don't know if they would have pulled them over. They may have waited for the investigation to more or less bring more people into their surveillance net. Blue Lazaro saying goodbye in another email, May 15th, saying she had moved in with a friend and had changed her phone number, and that her parents would no longer be able to contact her, the police report says. So, Blue Lazaro, from the chat, there's a lot of information, again, that we'll have to follow up on. But right now, this is the best information we have. And because law enforcement, again, hasn't put out, I checked both social media sites on Facebook for both Teresa Youngblood and for Felix Buchholz, and neither one of them had a social media Facebook page. Some of the pictures came from the FBI and from, of course, the local police that had the pictures from this case. Mike, that's about all I think we could cover today. Your final thoughts.
For everyone, including us, to be patient with this, and know that the FBI is, not just sitting on their hands with this one. You have Mayland, who gave his life in the performance of duty, and you've got the prime suspect in the hospital with a bullet wound. They're going to put a tremendous amount of pressure on her to crack this case open and figure out who may have helped her or get to that place with him, how they met, all the surrounding circumstances, and if there's anyone else involved. And hopefully keep our fingers crossed that there's going to be a few more arrests involved in this case.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't clear how there was a third person.
Right.
Dawn Kleiderman, no after the fact is providing a hideaway or something like that after the crime. She was physically present at the crime, just like a getaway driver, whether her bullet was the lethal one or not. Dawn, that's very good. She acted in concert, and she could be charged with murder, whether her bullet is the bullet that killed David Mayland or not, the Border Patrol agents. So we're a little baffled with the charges. We think the charges are very low, that she should be charged with murder in the first degree. So, folks, as new information comes forth in this case, we will absolutely bring it to you. It's sort of pretty interesting case, even though there's not a great deal of information, which also spurs our interest even more because we're thinking that the FBI potentially could be holding much back, and maybe it's a bigger investigation than we even know. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. Again, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button on the screen. Give us a thumbs up, hit the like button. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and God bless everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.